Assalamualaikum everyone. So today we'll discuss the partition of Bengal, and the question we're going to be discussing in this video is how successful was the partition of Bengal in 1905. So it states how successful. Successful means what were the factors which led to its kind of the reaction of these people who were living there in this particular question. So in this question we write about the Muslim reaction, Hindu reaction, and the British reaction. So first we will start with a short intro and a 14 mark. The British partitioned Bengal in 1905 as per the suggestion of Lord Curzon. So there is also a 4 mark of him which we will discuss further. The decision of partition had both positive and negative reactions, which determines if the partition was successful or not. The partition of Bengal was due to administrative issues and geographical factors. So these were the both factors which were responsible for the partition of Bengal, which made Lord Curzon initially to partition Bengal. But this question is for the but these administrative issues and geographical factors are for the question for the reasons for the partition of Bengal, not how successful was it. So first we start with the Muslim reaction. So the first we start with the Muslim reaction. The group which reacted positively. Okay, by the way, Muslims was the only group which reacted positively to the partition of Bengal. So the group which reacted positively to the partition of Bengal was the Muslims. This was because it was the first time. Yeah. So this was the first time that many Muslims were getting their rights and control in some area, especially mainly in the areas of Bengal since 1857. So now that you may ask why 1857. So the reason for this is that the War of Independence, which made the Muslims, which made the British create distrust between the Muslims and the British, because they thought that Muslims were responsible for starting the war. But again, this is a topic for another video, and this is part of the section 1. Muslims were finally free from the oppression of the Hindus, and now they can establish their cultural and religious centers easily. So when they were living in Bengal, combined Bengal with Eastern and Western Bengal both, so they were facing oppression from the Hindus because in overall Bengal, the Hindus were in majority. However, now as in Eastern Bengal, the Muslims were in majority now. So due to this, they had greater power, and they were now free from the oppression of Hindus, and now they can establish their cultural and religious centers easily on the eastern side of Bengal. Now the main part of this question is this the Hindus reaction, which is the main part of the question. However, beforehand I'll tell you that Hindus reaction was completely negative, no positive. However, the Hindus reacted negatively to the decision. The Hindus were completely against the decision of partition of Bengal. That's why the INC, which was formed in the 1885 along with some Hindu extremist groups. These groups were not named, but these are just Hindu extremist groups mainly. They initiated the Swadeshi movement on 17th August. Swadeshi means for your own country. It means that they started a movement that was for the betterment of their own country. They thought that they were representing all of India, and they thought that if they would do better from themselves, it would do better from India by opposing the partition of Bengal. And it was a protest against the decision of partition of Bengal, as it was announced in July but came effect into 16 October 1905. So this is a good fact that the partition was announced by the British in July. However, it got implemented. It was formally partitioned on 16th October 1905. Hindus in this movement to change the mind of the British, Hindus boycotted British goods, and they started throwing British clothes into bonfires. Bond, yeah, it became a matter of pride for the Hindus to wear locally produced goods. Series of strikes were called in Calcutta, which affected the industries there, which were mainly run by the British, and this made the British economy in India collapse. Hence, Swadeshi movement became a major factor, leading to the reversal of partition in 1911. Yeah. Next is the moreover, there was an other attempt. There was an assassination attempt actually on the future viceroy Lord Minto in 1905. Okay. By the way, Lord Minto is also the one who introduced the parliamentary reforms and also the one part in the Shimla deputation in which Sarah Khan went, because the Hindus were completely against the decision of partition. There was another assassination attempt in November 1909, which further proved that to control the violence of India, it was important and necessary to reverse the partition of Bengal. This also became a major reason too. Furthermore, the British partition was Bengal partition was announced by Lord Curzon on 20th July 1905, but came into effect on 16th October 1905. The Hindus and the INC Congress Party members even sent letters to the government. But the issue of the partition, these letters were about the partition to reverse the partition and about their views that they were completely against the decision of partition. Even sent letters to the government about the issue of the partition, but they were not solved. So they started the protest and it turned into violence. Mr. Gandhi always started the protest on the basis of non-violence, but they still ended up on the basis of violence. Every year on 16th October, the protests were organized as a day of mourning. So this was another point, the divide and rule. So, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, this point is about the Hindu nationalism. This is based on the Hindu nationalism view. Okay. Additionally, the Hindus further realized that the British is implementing divide and rule strategy. So this is the main point in this divide and rule strategy. Divide and rule means that they wanted to divide apart and then rule it simultaneously to increase the administration. So they started to protest and called for strikes throughout Bengal. In fact, the protests got expanded to other areas such as Punjab, Pune, and Bombay. Hence, King George V announced the reversal on 12th December 1911. This was all the reaction of the Hindus. We discussed so far. We've discussed the Muslim reaction and the Hindu reaction. Now let's start with the British reaction. But by the way, the British reaction is not so necessary to write in detail, but it's good that you mention it. So on now let's start with the British reaction. On the other hand, British took some immediate steps regarding these protests. They introduced restrictions on newspapers and public meetings. Editors of newspapers were persecuted that they have to write whatever the British said, and so yeah, they had to. They were persecuted, so they would only post what the British said, and the British basically got control of the press, and even arrested, especially during 1906 and 1908. This was mainly a part of the when the Hindu nationalism was decided. In 1908, a press act was introduced to limit the freedom of press, which would give better control to the British. In 1908, a Hindu nationalist leader, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, was arrested by the British as he was publicly supporting the Swadeshi movement. The local prisons were full of revolutionaries because the British had arrested many Hindus who were protesting against them, so British realized that they need to change their strategy. And this eventually led to the partition of Bengal. So the main part is the in conclusion. In conclusion, to some extent, the partition was successful. However, in my opinion, it was a complete failure as the Hindus were not satisfied from it and they were in majority of the continent. So this is a mainly In a democratic state, what the majority says goes. So this was the same case here. Next is the former question. There are only many two former questions in the whole for partition of Bengal in the college and whatever. Only two. Describe the impact of Lord Curzon in India. Lord Curzon became the viceroy in India of India in 1899, and he remained in power until 1905. This was the first fact. In 1903, he suggested to partition Bengal in two parts. Second fact, he had also introduced some new policies in finances, currency, and even railways. Third fact, his most important effort was the partitioning of Bengal, which offended many Hindus and also resulted in violence. It's quite a simple 14 formula you can just memorize. This is a perfect 4-on-4 answer. Next, describe the Swadeshi movement. The Swadeshi movement, you can write any 4 facts from this whole paragraph. You can write any 4 facts from this paragraph, but we'll just read this one. The Swadeshi movement was initiated by the Congress along with some Hindu extremist groups. First fact, on 17 August 1905. Second fact, it was a protest against, but I would suggest that you write for 17 August 1905 in a separate sentence, like the Partition movement was initiated by the Congress along with Hindu extremist groups, full stop. Then write it was started on 17th August 1905. It was a protest against the decision of partition of Bengal, in which Hindus boycotted British goods. These are again 2 more facts, and bought only locally produced goods. British clothes were burned in bonfires. Series of strikes were called in Calcutta, which affected the industries and caused the British economy to collapse. So these are good 5 to 6. These are good 5 to 6. What do you say? Facts which you could write for a complete formal answer. So yeah. Also, you may be thinking why I'm using MYM's past paper, Mohammed Yusuf Memon, Yusuf Memon's past paper. Actually, I found them on his website and they were good topical past papers, so I wanted to work digitally, so these are good for that. So this was just for this video, so thank you so much and bye.